Right, so then we're going to learn about some of the sacrifices today. Next week, we're going to spend the week on Shalom. Next week, we're going to spend the week, God willing, learning about Pesach. We'll learn a mimer about Pesach from the Rebbe, and we'll learn some of the laws of Pesach, the laws about Pesach. And I think that's what we'll do. Instead of learning the Chumash next week, we'll learn some laws of Pesach. We'll see. Okay, here we go. Now, meanwhile, this week we're learning about VaYikra. We're learning about the sacrifices. So what do we learn? We learned from the first, all we learned so far is the first two sentences, I think. No, we learned yesterday about the Ola. Okay, so there's basically like four types of sacrifices. There is what's called the Ola. The Ola is usually a free will offering. But there are the Olas Nadava. And we learned a little bit of how that is. It's brought from a male. And we're going to learn some of the details of the Ola. An Ola can be brought from a cow, a sheep, a goat, birds. And if a person is poor, he can bring meal offering. That's what's called a mincha. And then we have the Shlomim. After that, we have the Shlomim. The Shlomim is brought either a cow or a sheep or goat. I don't know about a goat, a cow or a sheep. And that can be male or female. And then we have what's called the Chatas. Chatat offering. That is brought only from the female. Only from a female Chatat offering. We'll learn a little bit about that also. And then we have the Shlomim. Did I say Shlomim? Yes, we Shlomim. And then we have the Asham. The Asham. The Chatat offering is brought, that's a sin offering, and is brought for sins that were done in ignorance. And a person did a sin in ignorance. He transgressed the Shabbat because he didn't know. He thought it was Tuesday, or he didn't know it was forbidden to light fire on Shabbos. He didn't know. So that's called. Then he did a sin, but he did it in ignorance. If he did it on purpose, then there's no. The offerings don't forgive. Then he has to just repent and recant and that's a chatat. Then there's what's called an asham. An asham is only brought. We learned in the morning. It's like 4 or 5 sins, special sins of sins or whatever it is. How do you say the aberrations like the Matzorah, asham Matzorah, and asham. Person makes a false oath. It brings an asham. So that's it. Let's see. Let me just see over here. So, and then we're going to learn about this in just one moment. Here it goes. That's right. A chatas is only from a cow and a goat and a sheep, and it's from a male, a female. Chatas is from a female. Then there's also certain differences about where the blood is spilled and which parts are burned up. So we'll talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's go. Then there's another interesting law that we're going to learn about that. And all of the sacrifices, you have to put salt. There has to be salt on the sacrifices. And there also has to be lavona. Lavona is this sort of incense, whatever it is, that's brought. Okay. So yesterday we learned about the Ola sacrifice, Ola Korbano. If you bring a Ola sacrifice, let me just make sure that I am recording this again. Can't be too sure. Like I said, this afternoon was a really nice class. The first class I recorded, but the second class I did not record. Okay. There was the sikha, beautiful sikha. Okay, if there's an Ola, so then you can bring it from a bakar, you can bring it from a cow, a male. So I guess a a bull, whatever, ox. And the Ola is what, 3 years old, right? 3 years old. Where is this? Yes. Just listen. Yeah. It doesn't say. Okay. So we'll learn about that. So he puts his hands on the head of the Ola, and it brings forgiveness for him. Not forgiveness, this is a Thanksgiving offering. So he puts his hands on it and gives thanks to God for whatever he's doing. A free offering. This is also if he just gave he just gave a donation to the temple. I donate a sacrifice. Now these sacrifices were very important to the point where there was even a thing called Keitza Mizbeach, that if there were no sacrifices, people didn't bring sacrifices, then they had extra sacrifices that they would just keep the altar busy because it was important to have these sacrifices going to God. It made a connection. Korban, it comes from language to come close. All right, so we learned about this, right, about the cow offering, and you would slaughter it on the what's called the east side, the north side, rather, the north side. That was like the opposite side where the ramp was going up. Okay, what if a person brings a iminatzon korbanot? What if a person brings this ola? Now the ola is totally burnt up on the altar. Nothing is eaten. The ola, they're korbanot. What if you didn't bring a cow? Like we said, it has to be a male, right? He brings it from the sheep or from the goats. So then it tells you what you have to do. You slaughter it on the east side, throw the blood on the Mizbech Saviv. We said what it means on the 2 corners, right? So there goes the horn. Then you cut it up into pieces, the head and the insides, and you put them on the wood that's on the fire. You burn it up. The inside, the stomach, the intestines, wash them off, get rid of all the waste that's in it, and then you burn them up also. It's a reach nichoach, a pleasing smell to God. We're going to delay a little bit when we get to the salt. What if you sacrifice a bird? So then it says if you bring a bird, so you bring a Torim or Bnei Yona. Those are young birds or older birds that you burn. The Torim are big ones, not small ones. Bnei Yona are small ones, not big ones. Torim Bnei Yona says when it starts to get yellow, then that's too big. You can't, too old. Can't sacrifice it. Makriva Cohen, it puts it on the, okay, now how do you sacrifice the bird offering? We talked about this yesterday. Malaket Rosho. So you do not slaughter it in a normal way. You slaughter it in a way which, if you did this for regular food outside of the temple, then it would be treif. It wouldn't be permissible to eat. But in the temple, this is the way it had to be done. And how was it done? It was a very difficult thing. The Kohen had to hold this offering in his hand, and he would push his nail into the back of the neck of it. It says, Malik, you don't do it with the finger, it does it with his finger, but with the finger. Kotzet tziporan, mimul arpo, v'chotech meferekes, and he breaks through the back of the neck, which that automatically would make a regular slaughtering forbidden. If you broke the neck before you got to the windpipe or the food pipe, and then he would cut the simanim. The simanim are the food pipe and the windpipe. Here's a 3-minute lesson on kosher shchita, how you have to slaughter an animal. Regular, let's say I want to have a chicken, you want to slaughter it, so you have to have a knife, doesn't have any blemishes on it, and then you move the knife back and forth, and you have to cut the food pipe and the windpipe, and then the animal is kosher to eat. You don't even have to cut the veins, but it's a good thing to cut the veins for various reasons, to cut the veins, and that's it. That makes the animal kosher. But if you would cut it from the back of the neck, a regular chicken or whatever, then you cut the spinal cord. That makes it treif. That makes it not kosher. So that's the difference between slaughtering and only by birds does this. Only by birds. Except for that, all the other sacrifices were slaughtered in the same way that your steak or your veal or whatever it is, your mutton is slaughtered from the front of the neck. Same thing in the temple. But the bird also, you would squeeze the bird against the side of the altar, squeeze out the blood from it. And the kiram is back, and all the blood goes out. And these three things, malak, you cut it, hiktir, right? Nimsa, then you burn up these other parts, the meat part of it, and etc. And you remove the bad part, the stomach. Of course, this is not the, what it says, what does he do? He, so in other words, what does he do? First of all, he squeezes out the blood. Second, okay. Then let me just have a look over here. Give me one moment, please. Over here, just 1 second. Excuse me. Oh, here it is. There it is. That we said before. Just give me 1 second. Let's see what done. He squeezes it, all the blood out, and then afterwards he burns it. That's right. The meat, okay, but he doesn't burn it. That's right. He does not burn it, and he just puts the blood there, and the Kohanim, and they eat it. They eat this bird offering, the olah. The Kohanim, they eat the olah. That's right. Very good. Okay, so that's what it says. Then you have to remove the stomach and the notzata, means the intestines, whatever. You throw them on the mizbech, you throw them away, and then you cut it on the back on the back, and you then it's a pleasing smell to God. Right. Okay. Next, what if a person doesn't have enough money and he wants to bring something to the Beis Mikdash? So he hasn't got enough money for a cow or a sheep or even for a bird. So he says then he can sacrifice, he can bring a meal offering. There are basically 4 or 5 different types of meal offerings. And we'll go through them, but very briefly. It says, nefesh, a soul, when he gives a mincha to God. A mincha means a bread offering. So here it says nefesh. This is the only sacrifice where it says nefesh, a soul. The only time it says in the cheapest offering, it says a soul. Who is the way that gives, who is the one who gives such a poor offering like this to the temple, a bread offering, a poor person? God says, I treat it as though that he gave his soul. In other words, the main thing is your intention more important than what you actually bring. Of course, it's nice to bring a nice big offering, but the main thing is your intention. As long as he gave the maximum that he could. Okay, he brings it to Kohanim, it comes with some. Then it talks about the different types of what there is. The remainder goes to he takes just one handful of it. And how did they take it? They took it like this. They would take it and like this, we see it. They would take it from the meal and just that part in their hand like this. Here. They would take the thing like this, the extra that was on both sides that would come out. And this part that was inside of these 3 fingers, that's what they would burn on the altar, and the rest would go to Aaron and his sons from the meal offering. They would eat it. So the Kohanim were eating a lot. There were 3 types of eating. The altar would eat, the Kohanim would eat, and the owners would eat. In the Aula offering, the owners wouldn't eat anything. Either it would be burned up or the Kohanim would eat it. The only one where everybody ate were the Shlomim. In the Shlomim offering, there was parts that were thrown on the altar, parts that the Kohanim would eat, and parts that the people ate. So there were sometimes these offerings, this bread offering, grain offering would be baked in an oven, and it would be matzah. It was forbidden to bring chametz into the Beis Mikdash. There was only 2 offerings that were made from chametz. All the other, the face bread, that was all matzah. The face bread, it says it was thick, but nevertheless it was only matzah. It was unleavened bread. There was only one, and that's one type of the korban toda. We'll see, was from chametz, and also the 2 breads that were brought on Shavuot, on the holiday of Shavuot, that was chametz. But except for that, everything was forbidden. That's what it says. There's a beautiful mimer in Derech Mitzvotecha. I don't know. Maybe we'll learn it. Maybe we'll learn about matzah. We'll see that that it was forbidden to bring chametz into the Beit HaMikdash, right? But by means of the work that they did in Passover and the counting of the Omer and the purification, they purified, then they could bring chametz into the Beit HaMikdash, because the end goal of the Jewish people is to refine chametz. Chametz is synonymous with egotism because it's blown up. It's more than what there actually is. There appears to you. In other words, what is presented to you is this big puffed up thing, but in reality it's a lot less. That's like what egotism does. But God wants there to be egotism if we use it properly. So that's the idea, that if we do our service on Passover, then we can bring chametz. But it's the only time in the year. And also you have to break it up. What if you bring it from a marcheshet? It's like fried in a pan. Again, the Kohen, he takes the minchat the azkarata, the hand thing I said before, what's called the kometz, and he takes this and he burns it on the altar, and the rest of it he eats. Here it is. So here he says, Korban Reshit takrivu oto Hashem, but al mizbeach lo yala l'reach nichoach. Here's the sentence. 1 second. Kol mincha, any bread offering that you bring to Hashem, you should not make it chametz. It's forbidden any leavened bread in the Beit HaMikdash. He calls sa'or, but called davash, any bread that raises up, or any sweet things. Here it says davash means any type of sweet fruits is also called honey. Sometimes honey is any sort of sweetness at all. Sometimes honey is honey from bees, and sometimes honey, it says, comes from dates, the juice that comes out of dates. But in this case, it means any sort of free sweetness, any sort of sweet fruits or sweetness, honey, anything like that, or any sort of chametz is forbidden to be a fire to God. You can't bring it in the Beit HaMikdash. It's forbidden. Here it says, the Baal HaTurim says, why can't you bring chametz? Because the Yetzer Hora, the selfish inclination, is compared to seor, is compared to a raised up bread. And for this reason, we're warned not to put any sweetness on the offering, because the Yetzer Hora also is sweet to a person like honey, at least in the beginning. But there's one offering that you can, Korban Reshit Takribu Lashem, the first sacrifice you can. What's the first sacrifice? So Rashi says, what can I bring from chametz? and from sweet things. What? Korban Reshit. What is the Korban Reshit? The two breads from Shavuot, and they come from Seor. They yes come from leavened bread, because it says Chametz Tiafena, Bikurim is also from the Vash. Was it Bikurim? It comes from the sweet fruits. You bring it. Bikuri Ta'enim V'Tamorim. You bring the first fruits that's brought on Shavuot, on the holiday of Shavuot. So you can also bring sweet things, and you can also bring bread that's elevated. Only on the holiday of Shavuot. Shavuot is when the Jews received the Torah. Okay, here's another law. Any sacrifice that you make, the mincha sacrifice, and we'll learn that all of the other sacrifices that are burned on the altar, the pieces of the sacrifices that are burned on the altar, the melech timlach, you have to bring salt. V'lo tashbit melech, do not omit salt, brit elokecha, the covenant of God from your bread offerings. And then it says, not only bread offerings, but all korbancha, all sacrifices, you have to bring also salt. Let's see what Rashi says. Because a brit, that God made a covenant with salt from the 6 days of creation. That God promised, he wanted the lower waters and the upper waters to be divided on the 2nd day of creation. So when he told the lower waters to be divided, so he said, don't worry, I will take the salt from you and I will bring it as an offering on the altar. And there's another offering from the water, and that's the water pouring, which is done in the holiday of Sukkot. On every sacrifice on the Ola Behema Ba'of and Imuri, and the burned parts of all of the holy offerings, you bring melach. And we're going to see also lavona is also brought, this some sort of what is it? Some sort of a incense was brought. Call korbancha takri melach timlach. It says 3 times. If this is mentioned salt in the pasuk. What does the sentence say? Every sentence you have to salt it with salt. Do not leave salt. Right? Every time you have to salt, it says 3 times salt. Why does it say 3 times salt over here? And mentions salt because the 3 places salt is put, there are 3 places that salt is put in the altar. It's put Belishkat HaMelech, in the what's called the office. It was a place where they would store the salt. There's also salt was put also on the kevish, on the ramp that went up to the altar. On the ramp that went up, there was salt there to salt the sacrifices. And also on the altar itself, there was salt. So salt would be there so that you were sure to put salt on the offerings. This is also to remember the salt, the Datzakani says, because salt is a thing that is eternal. It lasts forever. Salt doesn't rot and it doesn't waste away. To let you know that the sacrifices are an eternal covenant with God for forgiveness. The kapara, for forgiveness for us and not for God. Because God doesn't eat and he doesn't drink, but it's for our good. So in other words, we're pleasing God. That's the purpose that we're here in the world. So we're fulfilling our purpose. But what if a person does a sin and then he makes a sacrifice? So this sort of brings forgiveness. Now again, we're only talking about a sin that he did unintentionally, without the knowledge that it was a sin. This cleans the person from his sin. So it's the same thing with salt. Salt shows on the eternal covenant that there is with God, that God wants to be attached to us. Okay, then you should put on it oil, and you have to put on lavona. Like I said before, this is a mincha. All right, next, this is today's Chatat. What if a person wants to bring a Shlomim offering? A Shlomim offering. So it says, why is it called Shlomim? A peace offering? Because it makes peace in the world. Or another reason, there's peace because it makes peace between the altar. There's part of it is burned on the altar. The Kohanim, they eat a part. And the Baalim, and they also eat a part. Shlomim. It's a peace offering. You put your hand on the head of it, you slaughter it for Oel Moed. Now, this sacrifice of the Shlomim could be sacrificed anywhere in the Azorah. It didn't have to be sacrificed to the north of the altar, right? On the opposite, it could be sacrificed anywhere in the Azorah. And like we said before, the owner could also sacrifice it. And but here you splash it saviv. What does it mean, saviv? All around. He takes his finger and he runs it all around the whole altar. He put the finger in the blood and he brings it all around the altar. That's what it means, saviv. Let me just see what this. Let me just mark them down. Here it says Shlomim. Yeah. Yeah, no. Also, the Shlomim is the same thing as the Ola. Sorry, made a mistake. Shlomim is the same thing as the Ola. It's the Chatas that you go all the way around. We didn't get to the Chatas yet. The Shlomim, you go to the was it the northeast corner and the southwest corner, and you splash it from the vessel. You splash it, and that's on the two. So it comes out all the way around on the two corners. In other words, it hits all four sides of the altar. And then what do you sacrifice? And it says what you sacrifice: the kidneys and the fat that's on the kidneys and etc. You can also bring a cow, and you can also bring a kesev. You can also bring a sheep, male or female. We said that the Shlomim is male or female. He puts his hands on the head of it and he slaughters it. These are the parts that he slaughters of the Shlomim offering. Okay. He says, and this is a law for everyone. It says, here is a law forever. Called chelev v'kol dam lo tochelu. It is forbidden for a Jew to eat certain fats of the animal. It's called chelev. These are certain fats, it's like sticky fats that are on the stomach and other places. That's forbidden to eat chelev. It has to be removed. It's called nikur. They remove the chelev, and also all blood. It's forbidden to eat blood. Now, it doesn't mean all blood. It means only blood that came out of the animal that could come out. Because technically, you can eat raw meat. Yes, that's right. Jews can eat raw meat. If the blood did not come out, then it's permissible to eat the blood. Did you know that? Interesting thing. So why do you have to salt meat? Only if you want to boil it. If you want to boil meat, then you have to salt it to take the blood out. But if you want to eat it raw, you can. I don't know who would do it, but if you wanted to, you could. You probably have to wash it off after each bite to get rid of the blood that's on the surface. Even though according to the law, it says only if you cut it with a knife, but also, and if you want to roast the meat, then you don't have to salt it because the fire takes it out. But if you would want to boil it or fry it or something like that, then you would have to fry it or in oil, or something. Then you would have to salt it. Good. In other words, you're not allowed to eat blood. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of this. God said to Moshe to give over to the people. Speak to the Jews and tell them like this: a person that does a sin, b'shgaga, he did it b'shogeg. This word shogeg means that he didn't know it was forbidden. He did something, he wanted to do it, but he didn't know the thing that was forbidden. It's not that just he brushed against the lights on Shabbos, or he happened to stumble. right? He woke up in the middle of the night and he happened to stumble around and he was looking around for the door and he pushed the lights on or something like that. That's not called shogeg. That's called mitasek or something like that. But shogeg means that a person purposely did a certain action, but he didn't know the action was forbidden, right? He purposely lit a fire on Shabbat, but he thought it was permissible to light fires on Shabbat, right? Some rabbi told him that that it's permissible. That what is forbidden to light fires. That was only back there in the desert or something. Anyway, whatever it is, and so he didn't know it was forbidden, or he didn't know it was Shabbat. He knew it was forbidden to light fire on Shabbat, but he thought today was Thursday. He didn't know. And anyways, that's called a shogeg. Person that does a shogeg. All of the mitzvahs of God that he said, and he does one of these. The rabbi said, Chatas only comes on a dabash zadono lav v'koret, that if you would do it on purpose, he would get cut off from heaven, or if there was no witnesses, or that. And the shagaga, well, if he does it by accident, then it is a chatat. So, for instance, on Shabbat, if a person is warned on Shabbat and there's witnesses that see him do it, then he's taken to court and he's killed. But if there are no witnesses or there's improper warning or whatever, then he's not killed in court. It's almost impossible in Judaism to get killed by a death penalty. Almost impossible. You have to have the warning, and the person has to do it immediately after the warning. The warning has to be proper, and the witnesses have to be there, and they have to see him. And he has to do it on purpose, and he has to do the action immediately after he was warned. But if a Jew does a sin, on the other hand, and there is no warning, and he knows it's forbidden, so it says then the punishment comes from heaven. Okay, nowadays we see that these punishments don't come from heaven either, right? People can do all this and whatever they want to, and they live to be 98 years old. They become president of the synagogue. But anyway, that's the way. President of the synagogue, they become president of Israel. The chorus, so nowadays it's different. This explains that in the Tanya, in VaYikra Chap, how nowadays there's not a direct punishments anymore. And so yes. Okay, so what does he do if he has if it's the Kohen, the anointed Kohen, if he does a sin, so then here's an interesting one. He brings the cow to this. He takes the Kohen, the Mashiach, the anointed Kohen, takes from the blood, and etc. What he does. The Kohen now puts the blood on the karnot. This is on the protrusions that are on the top, on the corners of the altar. Remember, we talked about this here. Right? We have a picture. Show you a picture of it. We did this yesterday, but we'll do it again here. Here. This is a special type of chatat. See, here we have, let's move it over here. Here is our altar. See? Yeah, you got it? There it is. See, there's the altar. And here are the karnot. Here's one. Here, see on the corners? There were 4 in each one. So he puts them. So the Kohen does, okay? Kohen and Mashiach. The Chilav, here it goes. The skin, what he does with the skin. If all the Jewish people sin, what do? They also bring a chatat. What type of a chatat did they bring? The chatas, here's an interesting one. The elder puts his hands on it. The Kohen brings the blood. then you have to burn. Okay. Asher Nasi Chatat. What if the Nasi is the king? It says, what if the king sinned? But it's very strange language, Asher, if the king sinned. So it says, Lashon Ashrei, to be happy. Ashrei Ador, happy is the generation that the king will take it to heart to bring a sin offering for his mistake, shogeg. How much more so if he has regret for a purposeful sins? Asher, it's a happy thing. So in other words, for a person to do sins is not good, but for a person to admit his sins is a very, very happy thing. So we've learned today on 3 types of offerings, right? We learned, first of all, on the, actually 4. We learned a little bit. No, I'm sorry. Number 1, we learned some of the details of the ola, that for an ola, you can donate to the temple a cow. It has to be an ola is a male, masculine. You bring a cow, an ox, whatever, a sheep, a goat, or a bird, or a meal offering. And it says that God is very pleased by the meal offering also, if that's all that the person brings. That's the ola. Then we learned about the Shlomim. The Shlomim, that's also given for Thanksgiving. It says that if a person comes out of the hospital, or if a person crosses over the sea, or if a person was in prison, right, in danger or something, then he brings a Thanksgiving offering. That's one of the types of Shlomim that's brought. Shlomim can be brought from male or female, we said, and how that's done. It's eaten, part of it is eaten by the Kohen, part of it is eaten with this. The ola is totally burned up on the altar. Ola. Or it's eaten by the Kohanim. In certain cases, the bird says is eaten by the Kohanim and the bread offering. And then we have the Chatas. That's what we learned today. And we said that the Chatat offering is for sins that were done, we say in ignorance, sins were brought. And that's also special that the blood was sprinkled on the corners of the 4 corners of the altar. That's what the next offering we have to learn about is the Ashama, the Asham offering. And that we'll learn, God willing, tomorrow, God willing. So we're waiting that the 3rd base of Mikdash should be built. And repeat it. You can, I think you could probably, you want to find this in English, I think you can just type in, say the book of Leviticus in English. Maybe try it. Maybe that'll locate it. Leviticus, certainly it must be Leviticus in English. They have there's the Seforno, and there's different translations. Wonderful. Okay, look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at 8:15. God bless you. Have a good day with Mashiach now.